Hey guys, thank you very much for joining me in today's live. I know that I only gave like a 30-minute notice saying that I was coming on live, so thank you for joining. Chris, Yanis, Shazam, the iPad producer in the house. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Um, Robin, Roundtree, awesome. Thank you very much for joining. So today, basically what you guys are going to see from this live stream today is the battle that is happening in my head. I think it's awesome that a lot of people have started to take delivery of the Canon C70. I haven't, and I'm not, I called B&H today to find out sort of where I'm at, whether I'm getting it anytime soon or not. And they can't really commit to anything. They're basically saying, hey, it'll be December. And that's really all that they're saying to me. And I get it, right? Big demand. Lots of the people that watch my channel, of course, you guys know that I cover a lot of Canon cameras. But I think one thing that I've maybe not been crystal clear on is that I am not loyal to a brand because the brand is the brand. I'm loyal to a brand because it allows me to make money. And if pivoting is the right thing for me to do, I always pick the right tool for the job. And that's really kind of what prompted all of this. Because as I got off the phone call with B&H today, and by the way, again, congratulations to everyone who has received their camera. I am a little jealous. My feelings are not hurt. But I am thinking maybe it's a little bit of a blessing in disguise that I haven't received my camera, because it's given me time to digest and really internalize the differences or the different offerings from other cameras. And in thinking about that today, this is what actually got me to sort of start making my own list of what is important, why it is that I'm making some of the decisions that I'm making. And I wrote them down, and then I thought, well, why don't I just share this with all of you who have shown your support, some of you recently, many of you for quite a bit of time, because that is what allows us to survive in business, right? Like being able to pivot, make those adjustments, and choosing the right tools that are going to allow us to make money. So what we're going to be covering today, I'm just going to throw it up here on the screen, are these things. This is what I narrowed down the differences between the two cameras and what would make me pick one over the other. And I'm going to talk about each of these points individually, because I think they all have their ups and their downs. And while I've mentioned to you all that I did pre-order the Canon C70, I am not going to promise that I won't be picking up the FX6 because of this list. And I'm pointing this way because my monitor's on this side. But I think that that's kind of really important. So I figured, let's just go down the list. Let's talk about some of these differences, why it is that I might prefer one over the other. And if you guys have anything that you guys would like to chime in, please feel free. I'll post your comments up on the screen. I'll remove my other graphics so that we can all read them. But I think that this is what's sort of relevant and important at this point between the Canon and the Sony. The FX6, I think, is going to be a terrific camera, and I think the C70 is a terrific camera. So can you go wrong? The real answer is no, right? Like at this point in 2020, getting ready to go into December, we have so many choices that making a bad choice is actually difficult. Like all of these cameras allow us to express ourselves, tell our stories with very, very, very few restrictions. So if we can't accomplish that with, you know, the tools that are available on the market today, then we really need to work on our skills. So absolutely, both are great cameras, as James mentioned. And Robin, I do think that I don't think it's a no-brainer by any stretch, unless, you know, you own stock on one or the other, or you own every lens that one or the other makes. And I'm going to cover lenses here in just a few minutes. I've been posting a lot on Twitter as I'm going through this process, my thoughts and wanting to get some feedback from some people, other people who have or are using some of these cameras, because I want to make an educated decision, right? Like if I'm spending $6,000, which is what I am spending on a camera, I'd like that camera to kind of check off as many boxes as possible so that I could feel really good about my decision. And as I said, neither of the two are going to be a bad decision at this point. So if we start right off the top, one of them has a modular design, that's the FX6, and the other one has more of a hybrid crossover design, and that would be the C70. The crossover hybrid design I like because everything is on the body. It makes it convenient for me when I'm traveling. So I like that about it a lot. The modular design, believe it or not, especially after owning a Red for so many years, the modular design comes in really handy on varying sizes of productions, right? If I have a crew, I need to reposition my monitor. I can't just have a flippy screen because that's not going to cut it. There needs to be the operator side. There needs to be, the first AC side of the camera that controls and different access points are important. So the modularity design of the FX6 to me fits more for my paid productions or work that I do, whereas the hybrid crossover design of the C70 fits in really nice for me personally as an individual who might want to travel as light as possible in the smallest possible footprint. So do I think one's better than the other? Not really. I have a C500 Mark II, so I could use that as my A-cam for productions. And in that case, maybe there's a slight advantage to having the C70. But again, just different things for different tools for different reasons. But if I was traveling, I think I would prefer to travel with the C70 versus the FX6, even though the FX6 weighs 2 pounds, I think. James did a whole live where he was covering the FX6, and I believe that's what he said it was, about 2 pounds. So, or maybe slightly less than 2 pounds. So different tools for different reasons. Now let's talk about the sensor size, right? The FX6 is a full frame camera. You all have heard me say on my channel that I was transitioning to all full frame productions. At this point, I'm so far all in that going back to Super 35 would be difficult. The saving grace for the C70 for me is that focal reducer, right? Which basically makes my camera behave as if it was in fact full frame. So I think that that's the saving grace. On the flip side, like if you're thinking about picking up one or the other, full frame obviously has its advantages. Super 35 also has its advantages because Super 35 allows you an even larger selection of lenses, many that were made specifically for cinema cameras that do not cover full frame, that you'll be able to use on something like the C70 with the right adapter, right? A PL adapter, which I think Win Camera is probably the most popular PL adapter to RF. So that is going to open up a whole realm of possibilities in terms of which lenses you use. Of course, you could also adapt lenses to the FX6. So, but I guess my point is, with the FX6, your only option is full frame lenses, which instantly makes it a different type of investment, right? Because full frame lenses cost more. PL lenses that cover full frame cost more. To rent them, it costs more. So I think that that's an important point. Beyond that, again, if I'm traveling with the C70 and I just have Super 35, and that is, say I didn't bring my adapter and I'm just using RF lenses, then I'm getting more reach out of them. And when you're traveling, that generally means, you have more shot opportunities with less glass. So potentially having the ability to use Super 35, and I don't know, because I know Sony has done this in other cameras where you could actually crop into the sensor and get a Super 35, or maybe oversample from the full frame and then deliver to Super 35, as you're capturing. I don't know if the FX6 can do that. If any of you out there have used it and know this, maybe if you could post a comment, that would be terrific. But again, I think that there are some advantages to Super 35. Now, the Super 35 sensor on the C70 is the same sensor that the C300 Mark III has, which is also the DGO sensor, allowing for 16 plus stops of total dynamic range. I think that that's really important to note because obviously the C300 Mark III, it's a $10,000 camera. So for half of that price, roughly half that price, we're getting a C70. That's a baby C300 Mark III. So keep that in mind because I think that that is kind of relevant. Now, going back to the FX6, the FX6 has a sensor, full frame, that is very similar to the Sony A7S III, which really means it's going to be terrific for low light applications or applications where maybe your lighting budget is not where you need it to be. So from that standpoint, I would guess that if we put the two together, the FX6 and the C70, side by side in a high ISO test, the FX6 likely will outperform it. Yes, I know that the DGO sensor is mighty and capable, but high ISOs is that one trick that the Sony A7S group of cameras has always managed to pull off. So I think that that would be important. Hey, JS Films, thanks for stopping by, dude. Appreciate it. So different types of sensors. Dynamic range, I really think is going to be on par. I think the DGO sensor is going to really help the C70. So I would call it a draw because I'm always bringing in light when I need light. I'm never the type that just wants to shoot with practicals. But if you are, then that's something you probably should consider. Then, of course, we have the E-mount versus the RF mount. And the E-mount at this point is a mature mount for me. And yes, JS Films, this is live. So the E-mount is mature in that Sony has been producing mirrorless cameras for a long time. So they've had a lot of time to put together some really awesome lenses. Now, the RF mount lenses that Canon has, and they're not, as big as the EF collection at this point, but they are terrific lenses. No doubt. They're great lenses. But this is something that I actually tweeted about yesterday. So I'm not sure that I get it. But they put an RF mount on the C70. All the RF lenses, to my knowledge, as of today, which is a few days before Thanksgiving, so late November 2020, are full frame lenses. but the sensor in that camera is a Super 35. So I think I tweeted this yesterday where I said, am I crazy for thinking that it's weird that a cinema camera was released with an RF mount that is Super 35 size sensor, but there aren't any native lenses that are made for Super 35? And what that really means is Canon's marketing is brilliant, right? Like they know people like you guys, people like me are going to buy this camera. We're going to start buying more RF lenses. But the fact is that full frame lenses cost more than Super 35 lenses, which really means the marketing team is genius because they're going to get us to spend more money than we need to. Let that sink in for just a second. Whereas with Sony, we know that the FX6 is already full frame. We know that the lenses that can cover that full frame are going to be whatever that price is. There is no layering of thought process or maybe talking ourselves into, buying that full frame lens, when with the FX6, you have no option. If you wanted to cover your sensor and you don't want vignetting and you want to take full advantage of the camera, then you have to buy lenses that cover that sensor. With the C70, there's a little bit of a mind twist happening with the way that marketing works and, the way that products are released and when they are released. Because Canon clearly is protecting themselves as a company and making sure that we all continue to invest in their lenses. Not bad. It's just something that, as I said, as I'm waiting for my C70, I'm now beginning to think about. Because if Canon had released the C70 and made it available to me in relatively short order after I pre-ordered, I wouldn't have time to think about all this and internalize all this. But the more time that passes, the more time I have to think about it, and the more time I have to regret my purchase and potentially cancel my pre-order. And this is why we're having this live stream and why you guys are seeing me think in real time as I'm going through my own list. So, yeah, RF versus E-mount. Okay, the FX6, it can do DCI 4K up to 60 frames per second. The Canon C70 can do DCI 4K at 120 frames per second. So where that really matters to me is when I'm delivering, say, a broadcast commercial, whether it be national or regional broadcast commercial, and I'm delivering that in 2K. So if I'm delivering in 2K, I want to be capturing in 4K DCI, right? So that I actually get that extra width when I downsample to 2K for broadcast delivery. Because we're not doing a lot of broadcast delivery in 4K finishing, but we do finish in 2K very often. If it's local broadcast, HD is good enough for them. But for national accounts, we do either deliver in 4K, which is very rare, or 2K, which is very standard, at least as of today, for me and the clients and the agencies that I work with. So if I need to have high frame rates in 4K DCI, then my choice really has to be the C70. It's a better option for me. Where it gets really interesting is that if I crop down to Ultra HD, which, as I said, for local broadcast, that's good enough. It's actually more than good enough for local broadcast. Then I can do 120 frames per second on the FX6, no problem. And as a bonus, I get that 1080, 240 frames per second, ultra slow motion, potentially I don't have to rent a Phantom for that one shot that is going to need that higher frame rate. And I can elevate my production or production quality or level with that ultra slow motion for local clients. All of a sudden, I'm creating more differentiators between me and the free production that they get from the local cable companies, which we have 2 of them here, and the local TV stations, which we have 4 of them here. So the FX6 is like tucking at me saying, dude, this could make a big difference for you and potentially make you more money. And that's kind of where I'm at with that. You know, of course, you look at your own situation and then begin to think, is it worth it or not worth it? And how often would I use it? But I'll tell you, if I'm renting a Phantom, that's an extra, $2,500, $3,500 that I need to allocate to that camera rental. Not to mention media and the post-production side of it, which is not straightforward. So this is why I'm conflicted. Then as far as recording media, V90 SD cards on the C70, that's what Canon tells us. They do have a list of cards that are available, but more and more I'm seeing, at least on the Facebook group post, where people are saying, hey, look, I have 4 SanDisk cards that 3 of them work, 1 of them doesn't. Or other brand cards where, again, they have a few that work, some that don't. So I feel like V90 at this point is not clear enough, and I would like to see a more comprehensive list of cards, but not just cards that will work, but also cards that I can actually buy. Because that's the other thing, right? Like, are they available? Because I've been having a hell of a time finding V90 cards that, with brands that I've heard of, have used or have some experience with, that are also then in stock. And then there's the other, I guess, layer for these V90 cards, where some of them are only supported up to 128 GB, right? 128 gigabytes. If you buy a card, even if it is V90, that goes above that from some specific brands, it will not work on your C70. So I'm on the fence about the V90 SD cards on the C70. If I had my way, I'd have gone the way Sony did with the CF Express Type A cards. Or CF Express cards just like the ones on my C500 Mark II. That would be a better option for me, because having fewer types of media allow me to have more media, fewer card readers, work on location, especially hopefully when we begin to travel again here in 2021. I have less things that can go wrong. And I think that that's really important. So again, in my opinion, Sony thought it through a little better, but maybe Canon was thinking, we want to save people some money. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know why things get done the way they do. And then, of course, the subject of RAW. Whenever I'm working on a national commercial project, a docuseries, or a regional, like with a large agency, a regional production, even if they are not paying for RAW development, I like to shoot in RAW on those types of projects. Now, granted, those are not the everyday projects. They're not projects that I'm shooting 3 or 4 of them a month on. But I do like the flexibility of RAW. Just like on my R5, when I capture in RAW, I get a much better image, not just that I could work with, but just overall, everything about it, I like it. Whereas I feel somewhat limited when I capture in any of the non-RAW formats on my Canon EOS R5. And the reason really is the different space that I'm working in, right? When I'm in RAW, I get full access to Canon Cinema Gamut, I get Canon Log 2, and I get BT 2020 color. Whereas when I'm not, all of a sudden my options shrink. And when I'm trying to pull and do what I do in post-production on my projects, I can see those limitations. And I'm not saying that the image is bad or not great or that I don't like it. I think it's good for what it is, but I'm now used to having so much more flexibility. Given that the C70 won't be my A-cam, that it doesn't have RAW is not going to kill me. If it had it, I wouldn't hate it. For quick turnaround projects, I'm not going to shoot them in RAW. So that's really irrelevant. If I'm traveling, unless I'm trying to capture something very specific, like when I was in Australia and I wanted to get the bridge and the opera house in my same shot, and I was working in twilight, like blue hour, before and after sunset, to me, at that point, capturing in RAW was the right thing, and I'm glad I did, because had I not, I might not have been able to get the quality of shot that I wanted out of those, out of that scenario. So if I'm traveling with the C70, having a RAW option would be a plus. The fact that it doesn't have it kind of sucks. On the FX6, the fact that you can export RAW to, say, an Atomos recorder. Atomos is a whole different topic for me, but you can via SDI, which again, the C70 doesn't have SDI. That's a big plus, because at least I know that if I want RAW, I can have it out of that camera. And at this point, the C70 would be the only camera that I own where I cannot capture in RAW. And if I went with the FX6, I have an external recorder, so I could if I wanted to. And that extra flexibility, I guess I value it. Do I need it all the time? The answer is no. Do I have other tools that can help me get there? Yes. Would I have liked it? I wouldn't have hated it. Let's just say that. So now let's talk about autofocus. So obviously you guys know that I'm a huge fan of Canon autofocus. Dual pixel autofocus is and has been terrific. Face only, this is what I'm using for this live broadcast. So if I leave the frame, it's not going to focus. The focus is not going to go to my workstation back there where my Mac Pro is sitting. So I love the way autofocus works. On the FX6, they not only have, face detect or face priority, but they also have eye detect and eye priority. On the C70, we don't have eye detect autofocus. On the R5, we do. I love it. I love the way it works on the R5. On the C500 Mark II, we don't have eye detect, but also I use my C500 Mark II for larger projects, I guess is the best way to put it. So having this compact $6,000 camera with face priority, eye priority, autofocus, in this race of autofocus where I think Sony and Canon are neck to neck, I would say Sony put more into their body than Canon did. So there you go. ND. So the C70 has 10 stops of ND. Of course, it's glass that just gets stacked one on top of the other. And Sony has their 7 stops of variable electronic ND, which everyone that I've ever spoken to who has used the Sony electronic variable ND on the FX cameras, loves it. I personally have not, so I don't know what I'm missing. And also, I'm not sure that I'm ready to jump in to allow the camera to make the decision as to how much ND it's going to use on a shot, so that it balances out my focus, because I don't trust it yet. But as I said, everyone that I've ever known who has worked with that camera, who has used that, is impressed beyond impressed. They love it. They like it. The only complaint I've ever heard about the Sony electronic variable ND, is that if you choose to use a polarizer on your lens, all of a sudden, life gets really interesting for you and shots will be ruined. Again, I haven't done that personally. I don't know that that's true or how horrible that is, but I trust the DP friends who have said that that is a problem. And it's something that, might be worth testing. And I don't think I've ever seen a YouTube video about it. So if I end up getting the FX9, that'll be a test that I do. So the last thing, of course, is what matters most to most of us, is price. So the C70, if I want to keep it at Super 35, it's going to cost me $5,500. The FX6 at full frame is going to cost me $6,000, right? Well, if I want to make, which I did, want to make my C70 full frame, I need to buy that focal reducer. That's roughly $600. That then puts up my total price for $6,100. It's $100 more than the FX6. Can you guys see why I'm struggling with this decision? It's like, if price is a contributing factor, which it is, then how many of these other things are either going to cancel themselves out, or one is going to go right over the other and make me choose to either cancel my C70 pre-order or keep it? And that's really where I'm at. I have a similar list that I did where I'm comparing the FX6 against the Komodo, because I think that that's another one of those very worthwhile sit down and compare the two cameras. If you guys want to see it, be sure to let me know. Leave a thumbs up or leave a comment. And then we'll either do a live stream or I'll actually produce a video so that it can be a lot shorter than a live stream. But that's kind of really where I'm at. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts? I'm going to start going here through some of your comments. But it looks like you all have been... Hey, Tommy, thanks for stopping by, dude. Looks like you all have been commenting between the two of you. So yeah, there's a lot of conversation about the Komodo. Cool. Looks like you all have been just conversing amongst yourselves. So that is good. I'm going to leave that alone then. But what would you all do if you were me? Would you keep your pre-order for the C70, or would you dip your toe into that Sony ecosystem and start off with the FX6? And if it's great, keep investing in that system. That's kind of where I'm at. I don't know. It has in the past bothered me that Sony always chooses to do raw recording via some form of external recorder, because that generally adds to problems. And when it, educatetube.com says it's all, let me go back to this other screen. It all comes down to lenses. I'm at the point where I'm going to start buying every RF lens that is released, which really means I'm at the exact same point with Sony. I have two RF lenses. So that's a very small investment in RF lenses at this point for me. So if lenses are really the deciding factor, then I'm going to say the C70 and the FX6 are a tie for me, because I can buy Sony lenses with the money that I was going to use to buy the RF lenses. I'm not going to get rid of my EF lenses because I have a Canon C500 Mark II. So that's kind of really what it is. And as Tommy said, it's all about lights, which is cool. If you guys don't already follow Tommy, you should. Lots of great information on his channel. And I just love that it always comes back to light, because it's true. Without lights, in fact, when I was going to school, I remember my professor basically saying, if you want something in the shot to be part of the story, then you have to light for that thing. I don't care if it's a flower bouquet on a table, or if it's the salt shaker on the table behind. Whatever it is that you want to help tell your story, add that depth or whatever, lights are what makes that happen. If you don't light it, people won't see it. So I think that that's true. And this is one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of Tommy and I follow him. So shout out to Tommy. And let's see. Elias, I'll keep my Canon C70 pre-order. I already have heavily invested in Canon ecosystem. Yeah, so, that's the thing. It's like I have an R5. I have a C300 Mark II. I have a lot of EF lenses. I'm heavily invested in Canon, which is one of the reasons why I talk a lot about Canon. Let's see, RF lenses, and if I go in Sony, I'll be selling them. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I feel, because if for some reason Sony really did allow me to make more money in 2022 or 2021 rather, then that's kind of where I'm going to go. Cancel my pre-order. Sony killed Canon on this whole release. I don't know that it killed Canon, but I think it's giving Canon the competition that Canon has needed for years to allow Canon to begin to listen to all of us and release some of the tech that they've been working on faster than they would have normally. So I think that that has been a huge, huge upside. Also pre-ordered the C70, but eyeing the FX6. Yeah, how can't you, right? Been debating the same issue as you are. Yeah, I'm telling you, the longer it takes for me to get my C70, the more this cycle in my head is going to go. And hopefully I end up with the best possible decision for my circumstance. So yeah. What is James saying here? White balance is baked in and you get metadata and Final Cut X. Also, ProRes RAW bakes in white balance. I guess I didn't know that. I've never actually used ProRes RAW, so that's good to know. Looks like Sony is the slightly better package, but Canon is close. And that's kind of how I feel right now. I feel like Sony put more into their camera and then took layers off, right? Like, I don't need a focal reducer to get full frame. I know I need to buy full frame lenses to make it work with that camera. I feel like Sony overall is delivering something that's maybe slightly easier to just hit the ground running and get the expectations straight in my head. And that's kind of where I'm at. Ahmad, absolutely. Usability is king. And that is a great point because, as I mentioned, if I'm traveling, my preference is that unibody hybrid C70 option so that it doesn't look like I'm traveling with a video camera. So maybe that's something I need to like seriously weigh in on. Thank you, Tommy, for checking out the live stream. Let's see. Giannis, there are no sound inputs on the FX6 body. When you're using it in the gimbal, there is no way to have sound. That is such a great point. So for whatever reason, the FX6 has the XLR inputs into the handle. So when you take the handle off, you have no way of getting audio into the camera. That's like back in the C100 days. Not sure why Sony did it other than maybe to sell their other cameras. But that was kind of a weird omission. And in that case, really, the C70 is a better option, right? Because even though we have the mini XLRs, they're in the body. So you always have access to them. JOM Prod. I have EOS R, R5, and even the M50, and I'm waiting for my C70 to arrive. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not hating on the C70, and I haven't canceled my pre-order yet. So I think it's going to be a terrific camera. I don't think you could go wrong really with one or the other. It's just like which one can you use more often in more scenarios? And that's really what my struggle is at this point. Robin Roundtree, FX6 will be cheaper option long-term. E-mount glass will have Sigma and Tamron glass fairly cheap. Keep both systems. So that's a good point. And I'm going to tell you that for me, I'm not a huge Sigma glass fan, mostly because when I have tried it in one way or another, I found limitations. So for me, native glass from the camera manufacturer is like option one. And then beyond that, PL lenses are option two. Going third party for me typically is not a thing that I do. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just, if I had my choice, I would shoot everything on Arri Master Primes. And that's just the truth. Let's see. Jay Creates. Let me know if you sell your EF glass. When upgrading to RF glass, I'm local. Yeah, will do, man. For sure. But before I sell my EF glass, really, I need to sell the C500 Mark II. And that camera is incredible. I love everything about the camera. So chances are it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Let's see. Do you think the C70 will get RAW one day? I'm going to say this about Canon, and this is going to sound really harsh, because the answer is no, Pat. I don't think the C70 will ever get RAW, because one thing Canon is known for and has always done is whatever they release is what you get. We all thought for a while, maybe not me personally, but the community, the Canon community thought for a long time that we were going to get some sort of intermediate codec on the C200. And as you can see, it never happened and it never will. So when you buy a Canon camera, you should buy it for what it is then and know that it likely will not improve. EducateTube.com. Why do you even need to buy when you have X-T4 and other cameras that you have? I think you have all you need. So the answer is yes, I do have all I need if I only shot with one camera. But a lot of times, if I am doing, let's just talk coverage for a second, right? So I don't just do YouTube. I actually work with clients. So if I am covering a shot, not only am I getting this shot, but I'm also getting the reverse and oftentimes another angle, whether it be on a slider, dolly, or some sort of automation, so that I can have a dynamic shot that I could intercut with as I'm working or finishing my production. If I'm doing the editing, it makes my life easier. If I'm hired by an agency, it's not just about editing, it's a requirement. So if I can get coverage with 2 or 3 cameras at the same time, then my setups go much faster, which really means my overall production cost shrinks. And that's the reason why I have multiple cameras. And why in an ideal world, I'd have 3 of the exact same camera. But I'm a gearhead, so I don't always buy more than 2 of the same camera, right? So like I have 2 C500 Mark IIs. Those get me the main angle and then the reverse of whatever I'm shooting. My third camera at this point is the EOS R5. And those 3 mesh and work really well in a commercial production for me. The C70 would be a nice alternative because it removes obstacles that are there with the R5. I don't have to worry about bringing in NDs. The NDs are in the camera. Something that simple makes productions go way faster. So, sorry, long way to answer. Yeah, no RAW on the C70, it's not going to happen. Sorry, but no. With the adapter of the C70, C70 will still be using EF glass. So that's true. And one other downside, and I don't know how many people are talking about this or not, but when you choose to use the focal reducer on the C70, all of a sudden that dual pixel autofocus, which is terrific and awesome, is really only covering about 60% of the middle of the sensor or the image view, which really means you're not getting that full Super 35 dual pixel autofocus that you would. You're getting the cropped in version when you're using the focal reducer. So your framing, if you're relying on, autofocus, may need to be adjusted, and it may not always be a positive thing. So keep that in mind too. Tulio, for you, what about how you mix the FS6 footage along with other cameras? So that's something that obviously I need to test. But typically what I do whenever I get a new camera is I profile the camera. And then I create what I call a neutral look. And that becomes my first technical adjustment on any log capture from that camera. And then I use my LUT Packs to match them all. And typically that works. Will it work on the FX6? I don't know. It's something I'd have to sort out for sure. Let's see. James. Also, shout out to Janice. Okay, cool. Yep. His C70 footage and review was so nice. I will have to check that out because I don't think I've seen it yet. So I will be watching that. Thanks for letting me know and sharing. Shazam, the iPad producer. I like that I can take the C70 anywhere. And that's really honestly, that is the one thing that is making me hang on to the C70. It's small, unified, very hybrid looking camera that does not look like a video camera. And I feel like that's a big, big, big plus. Whoops, sorry, Dennis. Let's see. Dennis, S1H supports all RAW parameters in Final Cut Pro 10. Already Sony, only inside assimilate scratch. I didn't know that. I'm curious about the S1H. And maybe I should rent that camera and see how that might fit, because I think it's cheaper than both of these cameras at this point. It's just the lenses, right? And I don't know how that works either. So it might be worth checking out. Cool. Let's see. Tom. With the mirrorless during the last 2 years, though Sony looked better on paper, many preferred Canon for ergonomics at the end. You know, I'm going to tell you that for me personally, and I'll talk about this more when we go or when we have the Komodo conversation, but if I don't need to add a lot of things to the camera to get the image that I want out of it, I'm generally happier. And even though, like, for example, the Sony A7S III, terrific camera, a lot of people are loving it. A lot of people have bought it. No doubt it's going to be a beast. It is a beast. But if I'm using it on a production and now I need a cage and now I need ND filters and now I need some different way of doing audio or maybe adding that XLR module on top, all of a sudden I'm building out this camera to be way bigger than what it is. And I lose interest really fast. My Canon EOS R5, when I use it, I use the Canon adapter that has the variable ND. That's what I use for ND. I slap on an EF lens. It works just as if it was RF. It's just, slightly older tech. And I add nothing else to it. I'm able to work with the camera just like that. If Sony had some way of doing ND on their mirrorless cameras, I think that, honestly, I would consider them. But because that's not an option, having another matte box and having, spending the extra money on another set of NDs, I'm not sure that that's for me, at least not today. Yes, we are all going to be checking out Gianni's channel. I know I am. C70 Stealthy, absolutely, Derek. I agree with you. And yeah, I mean, if you don't need ND, that's even a smaller body, so that would totally do it. Let's see, Shazam. I think I might have missed that, so I'm not going to comment. Be checking. Yep. Okay, Scott. I know looks of the camera are not key, but why does the plastic on the FX6 look like 1980 VCR? So I'm not going to lie. I mean, you're right. It absolutely does look plasticky, right? And to keep the body at under 2 pounds, it's got to be some sort of composite. But here's what I really think. I really think Sony chose that color for that camera to make it seem like the Venice, to make it similar, to give people the psychological satisfaction of thinking that their other cameras are baby Sony Venice cameras. That's my thought. I have no founding behind it other than just how cynical I am. So there you go. Let's see. Timecode in for scratch audio sync to external audio when on a gimbal. I'm a big believer that, and by the way, I use timecode, right? But if there was some way of, I'm going to say it a different way. The way I use timecode is I jam my timecode out of the C500 Mark IIs into the tentacle sync. And then once my tentacle sync is in sync with the camera, I then use that tentacle sync on the R5. So if I could use something like a tentacle sync to get all of my cameras to do internal timecode, that would be the better and preferred way for me to work. I don't even know why I went there, but whatever. Let's see. only fine. Hell, if you already have the C500 Mark II Red, etc., have the capability of RAW there, C70 would cut with the C easier become. And that's the other thing. It's like, if my life is going to be easier in post-production, keeping or staying with the C70, then that really is going to have to be a serious consideration for me. So what I really need...
Get that. Could you try again?
I said serious, and yeah, whatever. What I really need, and maybe I'll ask the community, see if anybody is willing on doing this, if you all can share some clips from your C70 footage that we can download so we can actually take a look at. And if you also happen to have a C500 Mark II, and you could shoot similar clips and then make those also available for download so we can all get a real comparison, that would be fire. Like, that, I would be eternally grateful. I've not been able to get that from anyone at Canon that I know as of today. So if we can make this happen in the community, I mean, y'all are awesome. So if anybody out there has both of those cameras and can actually make that happen, please, please, please. Hell, I'm willing on throwing in some cash behind it to make sure that that happens. So I'm putting that out there. If any of you are interested, shoot me a message, send me a text or DM or something, and let's make this happen. That would actually be really, really cool. Let's see. Eduardo, if you had to start again and you owned no glass, what would you buy first? That's a very difficult question. For sure, it would be one of the two, either a Sony or a Canon. I'm not sure. Honestly, I'm not sure. I've had bad experiences with Sony before, but I think that their color science has evolved. So at this point, today in 2020, I don't know. I think it might just come down to what my total package would be, and then how much more would it cost me in post-production. I think that it might have to be something like that to make a decision if I was starting over. Which camera workflow will give you the most efficient workflow? Yeah, that's kind of what, I don't know. I don't know yet. And I'm hoping that I know that the Canon people and the Canon ambassadors have said that it's relatively easy to match the C70 with other Canon cinema cameras. Relatively easy doesn't mean it's a match, right? It means there is some work to it. How much of that work is there? I don't know. Let's see. Stephanie, you get the C70, but when the C90 comes in, C50 and C90 are coming. I have no idea if those are real cameras. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. I'm now one of those people that only believes Canon when I see it, because I was under the impression that the C70 was going to start shipping the first week of November, and obviously that didn't work out. So yeah. Giannis, yep, we're going to be checking out your channel. Will shooting RAW actually matter in the end? So shooting RAW matters most, in my opinion, when you're delivering to something other than the internet. If you're delivering to broadcast, yes. If you're working for an agency and they expect RAW from you, that means they're paying you more, then obviously there is no option. If you're working on your own projects, like if I was working on a short film today that I hope to sell to Netflix or to Amazon or Apple TV or any of the other streaming services that will continue to pop up, then having RAW files would be a good investment for me. If I'm shooting YouTube videos, RAW is stupid and it's an overkill. I think that would sum it up for me. FX6 fan, cool. Let's see. I'm investing in a work band now and have it wrapped with my company. That's awesome. That is awesome. And it's always better to be able to travel with gear safely than to use your seatbelt to hang on to your camera. I've done both. and yeah, we also have a production van, which is, it's just so much handier than hauling things in and out. You could leave them in there, park it inside when you're done. It just makes life easier. Let's see. Yanis. Great work on the review, especially coming from a fellow Greek, and that's rare. Okay, I'm not sure where we're at there. Gabriel, great info, mate. Thank you. Thanks. I believe you mentioned you have a red. Are you still shooting with it? If not, why? I mean, raw and super high dynamic range. Thank you. Okay, so am I still using my red? And the answer is no. Why? Because I can move faster, have a smaller footprint, work with smaller crews when I'm using my C500 Mark IIs. So the red will not be part of my arsenal into 2021. And I'll talk more about that in a different video. There are lots of reasons why red cameras are awesome. I'm just going to say that so that nobody thinks I hate red, because I don't hate red. I like red cameras a lot. In fact, the Komodo is another one of those cameras that's super tempting and one that I might not be able to resist. Okay, cool. Let's see. Late to the party, Mr. B. It's okay. This will be available on Rewind. I will upload a higher quality than the stream so that we can actually, for what it's worth, so you guys can read the, all of the different graphics from this screen. Let's see. I think the clear image zoom checkmates the focal reducer of the C70. Again, there are lots of good things about the FX6, and I'm tempted. This is why I'm making this video. MIG design, worried about how little we're hearing on the C70. Supposedly is shipping, but barely any content reviews out. So I actually talked to a friend of mine about that. See, my original thought was Canon is releasing in small quantities to Europe, to Asia, to Australia, and even to Canada to create more want and emotional buying from the US. And what he said was, no, it's likely just a straight up supply chain issue, right? If there aren't enough ships coming from China or Japan or whatever to get the product to where it's going, then it's going to take longer. And we are in a pandemic. So supply chains are stressed in a lot of ways. And the priority really should be keeping everybody safe, not just flooding the market with more cameras. So I'm glad that he actually said that to me, because it resonated. And I thought, okay, well, it makes sense. And hopefully that is in fact the case. And it isn't this artificial hype that is being created by a brand that wants to increase their sales. But, what do I know? Let's see. What should I buy for one-man band video recording? Komodo, FX6, or something else? I'm going to tell you, if you're a one-man band, don't buy a red camera. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you're making your work 3 to 5 times harder than it needs to be. So FX6, yes. C70, yes. C200, yes. C300 Mark III, yes. That would be my advice to you. Do you sell previous cameras when you buy new ones? The answer is yes. I don't keep all my cameras, and typically, if if a camera sits on a shelf for more than 3 months, then it's no longer part of my arsenal. So we try to make sure that we always keep them busy, because I treat every camera and every lens and every piece of gear that we buy in my production company as a revenue generating asset. So at the end of the year, I need to feel comfortable, even after I've already paid for it and turned my profit to what I want it to be. I need to know that all the gear that we have in place is still generating revenue, because if it's just sitting on the shelf, then it is costing me revenue, because that's just how I treat things, and that allows us to stay healthier, because if everything is producing, then that means my marketing team is doing their job, I'm doing my job as a creative director and as a camera operator, and everybody else is busy, which means I don't have to think ever about layoffs, pay cuts, benefit cuts, or anything else. So this is, maybe we'll talk about business in a different conversation. Sorry, I already showed that before. Let's see. Dennis, S1H has fantastic image, especially after firmware 2.0. Yeah, I think I'm going to rent that camera. And if James is agreeing, then I'm definitely renting that camera, because I just never did. Never did. Okay, there's more conversation about which camera best the other. That's good. Let's see. There are lots of comments, and I'm not going to be able to get to all of them because this is already gone longer than I thought it was going to go. How about this, guys? I'm going to reload this, so it'll be a replay video. I'm going to chop off. Okay, I just got a thumbs down, probably because I'm not going to get to all the comments. But we've been on here for like an hour and 12 minutes. Like, I don't want to keep everybody. There are lots of comments. I'm going to do my best to answer every single one of these comments on the replay video. And I'll be sure to post in the community saying that, hey, by the way, it's now up. But I think for today, we should probably let this topic rest. And with the understanding that both cameras are great, it's difficult to make a bad decision. I just got another thumbs down. Whatever. Sorry. I'm disappointing you, but I'm not going to be able to get to all the messages today or all the different comments. But I will get to them, and I'll do my best to answer them all. So I think we should call it a night. I want to thank every one of you for sticking around for an hour plus going through this topic. Some of your comments genuinely have helped me simmer down my anxiety between my decision. So I appreciate you all, and I will catch you guys on the next one. The next one, by the way, will be Komodo versus FX6. So hopefully I'll see you guys there. Take care.
can see it now. I can see it now. I can see it now. I can see it. I can see it now.